Hi friends, I'm Felicia. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my November wrap-up. I only read 3 books in November. It's been a long time since I've only read 3 books in a month. And I'm okay with that. I've been knitting like a crazy person for Christmas. And I've also got like halfway through a lot of books. So I have been reading, just not a lot. And I've not been finishing books. We'll just get right into it. So the first book that I finished was Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. I've never read this book before, but I actually really liked it. It's really different from any of the movie adaptations or even like pop culture references that I had ever heard before. It was really good. It was a really interesting look into like humanity. And I really like that. I think Victor Frankenstein is a dummy. He's really stupid, but I really liked it. I think this is actually, it's going to be one of my new favorite classics because there was just something in it that I feel like psychologically and sociologically it was very interesting. Yeah, even though there were things in here that I thought were stupid or I didn't get, I really liked it, and I will definitely be reading this again. It was just fascinating. So I finally have read Frankenstein. And I feel good. And now I feel smart. And then I had to actually go on Wikipedia and research where this idea of people chasing after him with pitchforks and torches comes from, because that's not in the book. Spoiler alert. And then the next book that I read was an audiobook, and that was You Don't Look Like Anyone I Know, I think, by Heather Sellers. And it was a memoir. I read one book for Nonfiction November. Or I finished one book for Nonfiction November, and it's a story, or it's a woman's memoir, and she has, I've forgotten the name of it, but she has face blindness, and so her brain doesn't make the connections with faces and names, so she can be looking right at her husband, and she doesn't know that it's him until he would say something. Or she was very good at like figuring out who people were through context of situations. She would reintroduce herself to the same woman 3 times at a party, yeah, and things like that. So it was really interesting, and so I thought this was going to be a memoir about her experiences with that, but a lot of it had to do actually with her growing up years and her parents. She had a very dysfunctional family. Yeah, it was really interesting just hearing about that, and it makes you feel good about your own family if your family isn't dysfunctional like that. If you read this book, I listened to this book, and she has a brother, and she mentions her brother maybe 3 times in the book and never says his name, and that was really confusing for me. I'm like, where's your brother? And then at the end of the book, she says that her brother's story is not hers to tell, so she intentionally left him out. I'm like, okay, that would have been good to know at the beginning of the book, because I was frustrated the whole book. So if you go into this book, know that she mentions brother and does not talk about him ever, and that's why. So, but yeah, it was really interesting. The first part was more about her family, then the second part was more of her dealing with her, figuring out that she had face blindness. It wasn't something that she ever really thought about, or like she didn't realize it was a thing until she was an adult, and so then it kind of goes into her journey of dealing with that and figuring it out and having a name for this thing that she had her whole life that she didn't know had a name. And that part was really interesting. Also the part with her family, it was a really interesting book, and I would recommend it. It's well worth a read, and the audiobook was quite good as well. It was very fascinating. Yeah, I haven't been much for audiobooks lately, but that one I listened to pretty much straight until it was done, because I was really invested in the story and I wanted to know what was going on. Then the last book that I completed in November was Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen. And I listened to this on audio as well over Remembrance Day weekend when I decided to paint my bedroom. So I was listening to this while I was painting my bedroom. And this was a book I read with my real life book club. We're a no-name book club. We don't have a name. But yeah, so we read Northanger Abbey, and this book is so underrated. It is so underrated for a Jane Austen book. I loved it. I loved everything about it. It was so funny. I was laughing out loud at times. Like, it's just hilarious. And I love Mr. Tilney. And I love that Jane Austen just knows how to write the most tedious characters. Like, you just want to just hurt yourself. And if you knew this person in real life, you would do anything to get away from them. It's just, I don't know how she's so good at writing those characters. Yeah, I feel like maybe you don't know the plot of Northanger Abbey because this is like her least maybe talked about book, that or Mansfield Park. This is Catherine Morland, and she is visiting Bath for the first time with family friends, and she meets this guy named Henry Tilney, and he's the best. Like, he's like right under Mr. Darcy. Like, that's how good he is. And so she, you know, Jane Austen, they're like having their little flirty thing. The first half of the book is kind of takes place in Bath, and her hanging out with him and other people, because that's what you do in Bath, you just hang out. And then the second half is her going to Northanger Abbey, which is where Henry Tilney lives, and his sister Eleanor actually invites Catherine to stay with them, and so she goes to visit them. And then the story kind of takes like a twist on like a gothic mystery, I guess, or a gothic romance kind of thing, a parody of gothic literature. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but that part, yeah, that was just really well done. If you've read Jane Eyre, I feel like if you've read Jane Eyre, you kind of get that feeling of like traditional gothic, and then you see how Jane Austen is parodying it, and it's just hilarious. And so I love this, and like, it's really short, and it's just so underrated. Like, you need to read it. It's really good. Those are the books that I finished, and this is probably like the shortest monthly wrap-up I ever did. Yeah, so we're just doing my December wrap-up today. Yeah, I read 4 books, and that's pretty good for December. It was very busy the whole month. There is a chair here temporarily, so I'm just gonna rest on it. The first book that I finished in December was Heartless by Marissa Meyer, and I just have the dust jacket here because I lent it to my sister. I'm not going to tell you what it's about because it's been fairly popular recently. All I will tell you is that it's a kind of a prequel Alice in Wonderland story that's like a Queen of Hearts origin story. And I love the way that Marissa Meyer does retellings. I think that she is very good at taking the things that are kind of critical to the story and kind of making sure that those elements are in there, but then she kind of uses them in an interesting way. I thought that was really great. I love her writing. I loved everything about this book. This may be considered a spoiler, but it also comes into play in the Lunar Chronicles as well. But I mean, if you know the Queen of Hearts, you know that this book is going to have some tragedy in it for the main character to become a Queen of Hearts, because when the book starts, she's really great and likable. All I'm going to say, what I don't like about Marissa Meyer's writing, is that she does not write death scenes well. Especially, like, I'm thinking about the Lunar Chronicles as well. Like, when someone important to one of the main characters dies, I don't feel like she really grasps that. Like how that feels when someone you love dies. It's just so underwhelming. Like, she doesn't get that. So I feel like, I mean, I don't know Marissa Meyer's story, but I feel like she has never lost anyone close to her because she does not write it well. That's all I'm trying to get at. That's the only thing I don't like about her writing. But otherwise, I love her writing. It's great. I'm not a huge Alice in Wonderland fan. Like, I could do without Alice in Wonderland, but I really like this book. So if you're an Alice in Wonderland fan, I think you'll love it. And if you just like story, fairy tale retellings, then I think you'll enjoy this as well. The next book that I read was Unbroken by Laura Hillenbrand. Gosh, I always forget how to say her name properly. Laura Hillenbrand. Anyways, and that is a real life story based around Louis Zamperini, who was in the Air Force during World War II, and he becomes a prisoner of war after being at sea for over 40 days and being stranded on a raft. And it's just an amazing story of survival and human resilience. My heart was breaking 100 million ways. I was listening to it on audiobook, and it was narrated by Edward Herman, and it was so good. But there were parts where I could not listen to it because it was just so brutal. The author does not take any, she does not shy away from describing the atrocities that went on in the prisoner of war camps and during the war, and it was just horrific. But it is such an amazing story of survival and human decency in the midst of these situations, and I loved it. And the ending, I almost started crying. I was listening to it at work and I almost started crying because it has just the most wonderful ending to his story, and I loved it. And so if you like nonfiction, if you like World War II anything like I do, I think you'll really appreciate this book, and I think this is a really important book. And now I would like to watch the movie, but I'm also scared that it's going to be horrible and I'm going to cry, but it's also going to be wonderful and beautiful. So yeah. So I highly recommend it. It was just amazing and it was so good. The next book that I read was Dash and Lily's Book of Dares by Rachel Cohn and David Levithan. And I listened to that on audio as well, and I listened to it in 2 days. Like, it was so fast. And it was a really cute story. The premise of the plot is that it's a boy and a girl, teenage boy and girl, exchange notes and letters to each other in a notebook. The boy, Dash, he finds the notebook in the Strand bookstore in New York. So right away, so that should tell you that this is going to be a quality book. And then the book is left there by Lily, and she's written a note in it. And so through the course of the book, they are exchanging the letters and thoughts in this notebook, and then they are leaving it places for the other person to find. And I thought it was really cute. The book was very fluffy, and by that I mean that there wasn't a crazy unnecessary conflict. The conflict of the story was more personal than just, you know, people being dumb and like miscommunication, because I hate that as a conflict, miscommunication. Yeah, it was just a fun Christmassy story because it takes place over Christmas, and Lily loves Christmas, and I'm like, girl, I get you. So yeah, I really like that, and it was just a fun book, and the narrators did a good job as well. Yeah, I've heard that the second book is not worth the time, so I'm not going to bother reading it. I'm just going to leave it at this one, and yeah, we'll just leave it at that. And then the last book that I finished in 2016 was Gemina by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff, and it took me 2 months to read this, you guys. That's stupid. I would not recommend reading it over 2 months because I think I didn't like this as much as Illuminae, and I think that's because it took me so long to read it, partly. And the other part was that there are lots of characters introduced in this book, and I was getting confused. And there are like even spreads in here with names and faces, and I was like, no, I can't keep track of who all of these people are. So that was one thing that frustrated me, I think just the story, I connected with the story in the first book better than this one. The characters, but I still really like this, and I really need to have the third book now. I really need to have it. So if you guys can finish writing it and publish it in February, that'd be great. Thanks. You should know what the premise of the Illuminae series is because it's very popular. But basically, it's a sci-fi series, and it's all like mixed media. It's told like a case file is what it is. Like someone's compiled a case file. There are people that have to run away from the bad guys, essentially. I like the first book better, but I enjoy this as well. I said that already. So I think I'm done. My battery light is flashing, so I feel like I was speed talking, but I've already been talking for 10 minutes, so that's probably fine. If you've read any of these books, let me know your thoughts down below, or if you have any suggestions for me based off of these books, and you think there are other books that I would enjoy based off of them. I don't know. Leave a comment down below. I'd love to chat with you about books or anything else. And until next time, so long and thanks for all the fish.